Unfortunately, before we can get to the fun parts, we have to try to figure out exactly why and specifically how all of us have become so stuck. Fact, we are all suffering, but not all of us are suffering artfully. Those of us who suck at skillful suffering keep suffering. Why? Because we aren't able to metabolize it and move through it and transform it. Instead, we try to avoid it or ignore it or make it go away. But that is exactly how we get stuck. This diagram that you're looking at is a cycle of suffering that most of us at some point in our lives get sucked into. What I haven't labeled is the hostile environment or the water that we're all swimming in. But think of it as our society or our culture. Now, I'm talking specifically here about the modern Western dominant culture, the one that most of us have had to learn to adapt to, at least on some level, in order to live and breathe and work and function and pay taxes and all that stuff. Let's unpack this hostile environment a little bit. In 1939, Britain's wartime propaganda department created the slogan, "Keep calm and carry on." Its message of sober restraint was intended to inform the British people of how to conduct themselves in the face of widespread fear and impending war. So basically, society's answer to facing fear was to keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. Go about your life normally, buy the groceries, feed the cats, and try to ignore the fact that bombs might be falling on your head imminently. Ignore what your emotions are trying to tell you. Ignore any potential for deeper understanding and growth that comes from turning inward and processing these big feelings. Ignore this opportunity to call on your inner strength and wisdom and courage. In short, ignore this perfect opportunity for transformation and instead just carry on. Now, obviously, none of us are living in wartime London at the moment, thankfully, but most of us are living in societies and communities and families that have inherited these unhealthy relationships towards suffering. If the British are taught to keep a stiff upper lip, Americans are taught to just suck it up and get over it. And I would argue that every other iteration of Western culture has adopted similar approaches to suffering. Deny, deny, deny. While times have changed, the message hasn't. Don't face the fear. Don't tend to the hurt. Do not ever allow yourself to be vulnerable. And the answer? Just think positive and stay strong, and you'll be fine. Except we're not fine. None of us are fine. Because to suffer is to be human. To be human is to suffer. To feel vulnerable and hurt and sad and scared and angry and alone is to be human. To fall upon the thorns of life and bleed is to be alive. Denying that our suffering exists is denying that large parts of ourselves exist, and suppressing these parts of ourselves cuts us off from living our lives as fully and as richly and as robustly as possible. But openly suffering carries a massive risk. The risk is being a social outcast, being exiled from your community. Who wants to take that risk? Nobody. So what if it means that we sacrifice our authentic selves in order to fit in? At least we are safe. And it makes complete sense that we do this. We're primed for survival. Fitting in and being part of the group is essential to our survival. Unlike more traditional community-oriented cultures, our modern Western individualistic culture is particularly skilled at excluding its members based on arbitrary criteria. It's basically one big country club. Okay, the rules might be different, but the consequences of not following them are the same. You're out of the club. It might be driving the right car, or reading the right books, or having the right shaped eyebrows, or hating the right group of people, listening to the right kind of music, or wearing the right kind of shoes, or following the right people on Instagram. Your group probably looks way cooler than a bunch of tops at a country club. But if the right of admission is reserved based on what you do or don't do, or wear or don't wear, it's still basically a country club. Regardless of what your country club looks like and what the criteria for belonging are, if there's a chance of getting kicked out, you will probably find yourself constantly comparing yourself to other members to make sure you're safe from being banished. We compare ourselves to our neighbors and feel shitty about ourselves when we're not as rich or as successful as they are, or we feel shitty about ourselves when their marriages look happier than ours, or when their vacations look more exotic than ours, or when their skin and their hair looks younger and shinier than ours, or when their kids are smarter than ours. Whatever the bar that we use to compare ourselves to others, the end result is the same. Deep down, we all feel shitty about ourselves. We because we're only as valuable as our last achievements, and you're only as pretty as your last good hair day, and your marriage is only as good as the last time you had really great sex, and your sense of self-worth is only as high as the last time you were recognized or envied by others. But here's the rub. The more we strive for this recognition and approval from the outside world, the less connected we actually feel to ourselves or those around us. Because we're seeking approval based on a fake version of ourselves, a carefully constructed persona that we allow others to see. We never let them see the other parts, the messy parts. We keep those bits locked up in the basement. No wonder we all have imposter syndrome. We all are, on some level, forced to be imposters. But what we're all really seeking isn't fame or envy or recognition. At the end of the day, all any of us truly need is to feel like we belong, like we're accepted, just as we are. This is a very basic human need. It's right up there with food and water and safety. So why is it so difficult for us to feel as though we truly belong? Because a society that doesn't allow suffering is a society that doesn't provide belonging. The DSM-5 has a litany of labels, 297 to be exact, to foist upon its members of society who are not fitting in, who are simply unable or unwilling to keep calm and carry on. Western psychology has developed 297 different ways of blaming the victim for not fitting in. While we haven't all been formally diagnosed with a psychological disorder, although I would argue that we all have at least one label that would apply to us based on this classification system, the message that we all receive at some point in our lives is the same. Your suffering is your fault. You are the problem. It's not safe to be yourself in this society. It's not safe to be vulnerable. It's not safe to suffer. You must adapt. You must conform. You must suppress. You must deny. This is the deal you have to be willing to make if you want to be socially accepted, if you don't want to risk becoming a pariah. Understandably, when given the choice between living alone in exile or fitting into an oppressive and intolerant society, most of us will choose to fit in, because the price we would have to pay for being authentic and for being vulnerable is far too high. So instead, we spend our lives monitoring ourselves and our behavior and our performances and our calories and our steps and our conversations and our bank accounts and our children's grades. And this constant monitoring takes up a very big chunk of our brain power on any given day and during most of our waking hours. This constant managing of ourselves and our behaviors, and most importantly, of other people's perception of us, has become all-consuming. So why do we do it? For the simple reason that we know it will keep us safe and included in the tribe. We didn't make the rules, we just have to live by them. Okay, enough of my spiel. Time for some self-reflection. Exercise 1 in your workbook is challenging you to explore what parts of yourself you have not been allowed to express in your family or community or in your workplace. A good way to uncover this is to explore what shame labels you actively try to avoid. For instance, laziness is a big shame label in our society because so many of us are taught that we need to be productive in order to feel worthy. So take some time to reflect on your own shame labels and circle the ones that have the most charge or the most energy around them. And write them up if they're not included in the ones that I listed. And meet me back here when you're done.